Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation, and this is Coffee and Wisdom. This week, being Thanksgiving week, we're going to take a little bit of a look at gratitude and tradition. Today, I want to go at maybe one of the most famous of the gratitude pictures around Thanksgiving time, the very famous Norman Rockwell's painting that's often called I'll Be Home for Christmas or something like that. No, that isn't actually the title. It is Freedom from Want, that was published in 1943, painted in 1942. And so you've seen this everywhere. There are lots of parodies of it out there around. But so, it's justly famous for being very much a picture of its time, that being the World War II period. So actually, however, it's part of the Four Freedoms series. Rockwell, when he was asked later about this particular picture, said the Europeans sort of resented it because it wasn't freedom from want, it was overabundance. The table was so loaded down with food. Well, of course, the thing is that this is not a photograph, even though it is photographically realistic as a painting technique, but actually it's not a photograph. And no, turkeys of that size were not all that plentiful in 1943 United States either, and certainly not in the Europe of World War II. What this is referring to is Franklin Roosevelt's four freedoms that he had talked about in 1941. The first is freedom of speech, second, freedom of worship, the third, freedom from want, and the fourth, freedom from fear. Rockwell was to do four of those as it went through. And one of the things about it is that they also had an essay that went along with each of the paintings. And that's what I want to get at today, because this is maybe a little known bit of the story, but it's an important part of the story. And that is that they asked Carlos Sampayan Bulosan, an English language Filipino immigrant, to do an essay called Freedom from Want. And so he did this, and you may not know, nowadays it's been more or less forgotten, but the Saturday Evening Post was the most important magazine in the United States in the 20s and 30s and 40s. The cover of the Saturday Evening Post was very valuable real estate, and Norman Rockwell is most famous for having been the one that filled a lot of those. This is Rosie the Riveter from the time. That's become part of the American lexicon at this point. And that's really what was going on is Rockwell's bucolic, nostalgic look at America, but he was also dealing with things very much of that time. So in the 1943 Saturday Evening Post, the Filipino novelist and poet Carlos Bulosan wrote an essay called Freedom from Want, referring back to Roosevelt's speech and also Norman Rockwell's painting. And this is what he wrote. Our march to freedom is not complete unless want is annihilated. The America we hope to see is not merely a physical, but also a spiritual and an intellectual world. We are the mirror of what America is. If America wants us to be living and free, then we must be living and free. If we fail, then America fails. What do we want? We want complete security and peace. We want to share the promises and fruits of American life. We want to be free from fear and hunger. If you want to know what we are marching. And this gives you a little bit of an idea of what he was about. He was an activist for labor, especially for Filipino laborers in the canning industry in California, and worked hard to unionize that area. He unfortunately died broke. He probably died of malnutrition, unfortunately, and nowadays is completely forgotten, more or less. But here's his gravestone in Seattle, and they even got his birth date wrong. He was born in 1913, died in 1956, writer, poet, and activist. But when we look back at people of color in the 1940s in American popular culture, he's one of the few people who was able to communicate something out there in a major magazine. So Carlos Bulosan, forgotten today more or less, but probably shouldn't be forgotten, and a very important early Filipino immigrant into the United States. And that's kind of the rest of the story on this, is that yes, freedom from want looked a lot like this American turkey Thanksgiving thing, but it also reveals a lot more about what was actually going on in the minds of Americans in those days. So gratitude, yes, but a very nervous sort of gratitude, because these freedoms were definitely under attack, both by the Axis powers and also within the U.S. So Carlos Bulosan, a guy to remember, activist from the 30s, 40s, and 1950s. I'm going to be talking about gratitude this week and a little bit of the background of these kinds of things. Definitely join us Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We'll take Thursday and Friday off for the Thanksgiving holiday. Help out First Unitarian Society. Keep this sort of thing going by going to firstunitarian.org/donate or to PayPal. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.